Welcome, and thank you all for joining us to connect with the president of Good Shepherd Food Bank, Kristen Miale, today. We're so grateful for all of your support and to have you here with us. I am Cassidy Goslin, the donor engagement specialist here at the food bank. And today we are joined by a few other members of the development team: Ethan, Aaron Fogg, Aaron Urema, I'm so sorry, Courtney, and so in just a moment, we'll hear from Kristen, and then we'll have plenty of time for discussion. You can save questions until we are open for conversation, or feel free to type them into the chat box as well, and we'll be sure to address them. I do want to note that the session is being recorded today, so we're able to share this with those who are unable to attend. So without further delay, I will hand things on over to Kristen.
Right. Thank you, Cassidy. And thank you all for being here. The spirit and gratitude and generosity during this holiday season makes it a really special time to connect with donors. So I'm so thankful to each of you for supporting our pursuit of a hunger-free Maine. Making room for conversations like this is as important as financial support and volunteer hours. Your curiosity and interest are certainly a gift all of their own. So thank you for sharing your time with us today. At the food bank, we often refer to our bold goal, and you may have heard members of our staff mention it, but in case you need a reminder, our bold goal is to close Maine's meal gap and end hunger in Maine by 2025. So what do we mean when we say close the meal gap? Well, we're using data from the USDA's annual food and security report, as well as Feeding America's Map the Meal Gap. And using this, we estimate that 40 million meals are needed annually to feed every Mainer. These are the meals that are needed after considering the impact of the federal nutrition programs, including SNAP, or the food stamp program, and the school nutrition programs. So it's the meals that the charitable food network need to provide. We are that safety net underneath the safety net of those federal nutrition programs. The food bank and our partners distributed 31.6 million meals last year, more than ever before, but still more than 8 million meals short of the estimated need. So that's the remaining meal gap that we plan to close. The goal was established in 2015 after we were coming off of several years of growth in response to the Great Recession. And we had been operating in the traditional nonprofit kind of year-to-year planning, basing our plans on how much food do we think we can get, how much money do we think we can raise. And so we wanted to move away from that scarcity mentality way of planning, and instead asked ourselves, what would it take to truly meet the need for hunger relief in Maine? And so we set the bold 10-year goal to close Maine's meal gap by providing enough food when and where it is needed in Maine by 2025. Now, we recognize when we say ending hunger by this measure, we're talking about the immediate short-term response to ending hunger. The underlying causes that contribute to why hunger exists in the first place will likely remain. But because of the role that hunger plays in perpetuating poverty, we believe it's the right place to start. But it is just a start. When we meet this goal, we will be proud, but we will not be satisfied, because we also must invest in strategies that address the root causes of hunger and poverty, and that will be part of our work too. To achieve these aspirations, we set to work raising the funding necessary to increase our own capacity and that of our partners, to identify additional sources of healthy food, and to connect neighbors experiencing hunger with other available resources to support their families. We've had many successes along the way, including a $5 million renovation of our distribution center in Hamden, which significantly increased our ability to serve our partners. We were well on our way to closing the meal gap when COVID hit, growing the meal gap and infusing our work with uncertainty. The challenges created by the pandemic only emphasized the need for an ambitious goal and a realistic plan to meet it. Last January, we officially announced the campaign to end hunger in Maine, which is a comprehensive effort to raise an unprecedented $250 million in both the philanthropy and food donations needed to close the 40 million meal gap in Maine. The response has been incredible so far, and I'm really pleased to report to you that we're already 66% of the way towards meeting our $250 million goal, and your support has absolutely helped us get where we are today. So where are we today, and what does it mean for Maine families who are experiencing hunger? Well, a report recently released by the USDA on 2020 food insecurity rates by household indicates that the overall food insecurity rate for Maine households declined to 11.4% between 2018 and 2020, and a decrease compared to the previous 3 years. So that's great news, but it isn't the whole story. Maine's food insecurity rate is still higher than the national average. We rank 5th in the nation for very low food security rates, a more severe range of food insecurity that involves reduced food intake and disrupted eating patterns. More than 31,000 households in Maine fall into this concerning category. Rates of hunger were on the decline prior to the pandemic, which initially caused an acute hunger crisis. But this new data from the USDA indicates that the predicted catastrophic rates of food insecurity were avoided in 2020, thanks to the expansion to the Supplemental Nutrition Program, or SNAP, and school nutrition programming, such as the Pandemic EBT, or Electronic Benefit Transfer Program, all programs that we advocated for during the pandemic. And this meant that some Mainers were able to access more nutritious food from their local grocery store or their school, rather than at a community food pantry. And that is very good news. So while encouraging for some Mainers, the USDA report also shows that hunger still disproportionately affects Black and Latino households with higher than average rates of food insecurity. And we've seen this on the ground in Maine, where Black, Indigenous, and other communities of color have experienced significant growth in need over the past year. We have a lot of work to do to address this disparity. We've started by making cash grants to organizations led by and serving communities of color, as well as providing culturally relevant food to Maine's vulnerable communities. With the help of a diverse board that represents the state that we're proud to serve, we're making additional investments in equity, diversity, and inclusion, education, and initiatives, and we are determined to support the needs of all Mainers at risk of hunger, not just the majority. The USDA report also identified that households led by single women with children had significantly higher rates of hunger. So we will continue to invest in growing the capacity of our programs that support families with children. Our school-based programs have doubled the number of meals they distributed compared with pre-pandemic levels. And we continue to invest in our new relationship with Head Start, where we now have nearly 40 food pantries embedded within their locations. As we look to the last 4 years of our campaign, we will be giving more attention to these populations who are most impacted by hunger and making sure that food access is reaching everyone in the manner most appropriate and effective for them. Our plan to close the meal gap by 2025 is only as strong as the strategies in place to help meet it. We're encouraged that advocacy in Augusta from the food bank and from our partners contributed to the state's adoption of free school meals for all children. Policies like that, when paired with federal updates to SNAP's Thrifty Meal Plan and the Child Tax Credit, puts money in the pockets of low-income families in Maine, which helps build stability. The Charitable Food Network is here to fill the void in that federal and state safety net. But when these programs are not funded sufficiently, our network is on the hamster wheel of providing more meals each year. The success of the campaign to end hunger has enabled us to invest in research and advocacy. We can and will grow our nutritious food distribution to meet the urgent need of Mainers today, like we did over the past year. But we can also close Maine's meal gap by advocating for policies and public and private partnerships that strengthen the safety net and reduce the demand on food pantries and meal sites across the state. Our plan to close the meal gap also means strengthening the network of more than 500 partner agencies, like our food pantries, meal sites, schools, and health centers across the state. These partners play critical roles in their communities. They understand the unique needs of the families who depend on their services. Because our partners and the families they serve are the real experts on what's needed to ensure everyone has access to enough healthy food, we are granting more funds than ever before to our partners to support innovation, capacity building, and expanded food access in their communities. Closing the meal gap by 2025 and ending hunger in Maine is an achievable goal, but only with the continued partnership between our network of partner agencies, Mainers with lived experience of hunger, and donors like you who are committed to making a difference. Your support to the campaign to end hunger is already helping to stabilize the lives of neighbors in need, which will ultimately lead to a stronger, more resilient and hunger-free Maine. So I've talked so far for quite a bit of time, feels like, but I want to stop now to turn this into more of a conversation. Would love to hear your questions or comments. And again, I think we're a small group. Feel free to unmute yourself and chime in, or raise your hand if you're more comfortable doing that, or put a question in the chat, whichever you'd prefer.
Kristen, I've got a question. What is it that's unique about Maine that causes us to be 5th lowest in the country? Why is it something about the causes of hunger here that that is high, or is it a lack of resources, or why is it that we're so in such bad shape on that scale?
Well, this is what I think. I don't think anything has been, certainly reported on the why behind it. But hunger ultimately is about economic insecurity. It's ultimately about income inequality. And Maine was really severely impacted by the change of our economy over the past 20 years. Actually, probably more like 50 years, but certainly over the past 20 years, where we lost a considerable amount of middle income jobs. The loss of manufacturing, the loss of some of our heritage industries, so many jobs going overseas, and those jobs have been replaced, right? Our unemployment rate is very, very low. But the problem is those higher wage jobs were replaced by primarily lower wage jobs in service industries, jobs that often come not only with lower wages, but with fewer benefits, challenges such as not having stable scheduling, making it challenging for working families, not having things like paid time off. So Maine's economy really does not provide enough opportunities for working families to be able to earn the living that they need to be able to cover their basic needs. So I think that's the biggest contributor. Maine also has very high rates of, we have a lot of a big senior population who are on a fixed income. And Maine has obviously has higher rates of living. We have higher energy costs, we have higher food costs. And so I think when you have a higher senior population, the risk of seniors experiencing hunger is even higher. So those are my thoughts on why I think Maine has such an acute need. And it's no surprise that the other states that are right in there with us and having some of the highest rates of very low food security it's the Appalachia area of the country, the southeastern part, and Maine, and then New Mexico is another area that also is in that space as well. Other questions or thoughts? I know you're not a quiet group, so.
Well, I did have another question, which is you mentioned programs that are addressing the root causes of hunger. Are there specific things that Good Shepherd is working on, programs that address root causes of hunger as opposed to providing meals for kids and that kind of thing? Are there other programs you're working on right now?
Yeah, so a couple things. It's definitely emerging work for us, but I think over the next few years, you're going to see us putting more resources into that space. So where we are right now is identifying what is the right role for us to play. There's obviously a lot of good ideas out there and a lot of things we could do, but what should we be doing to address the root causes? And so we are in a place now where we're piloting a lot of different ideas to see which programs seem to have the most impact, and also to identify who else is in this space and where does it make sense for us to lead versus to follow and support. So in a couple areas, I was first and foremost, and advocacy is probably the space we're in the most right now in terms of root causes and looking at policies that directly help to stabilize people experiencing hunger and poverty, their financial situations. We are part of the Ending Hunger by 2030 task force through the that's going through the Department of Agriculture at the state level, but is really led by the governor. And that task force is looking at both short-term as well as the long-term, and has made a series of recommendations about addressing the root causes. We are waiting to see how the legislature plans to implement those recommendations. And then based on that, we'll determine where's the right role for the food bank to get involved. And those, not surprisingly, that the recommendations are improved access to, broadband, childcare, healthcare, transportation challenges. So nothing that I think anyone in this group would be surprised to see on that list. The other areas that we're looking at includes our Building Advocates Leadership Program, which is a program to include people with lived experience in this advocacy work, and providing a training opportunity for people with lived experience to use their personal story to impact change. We firmly believe that ending hunger and addressing poverty not only needs to come from increasing people's resources, but also needs to address what we know are the long-term impacts of people who are experiencing poverty, which means that they frequently have had a series of experiences that makes them feel disconnected from their community, marginalized, regularly receiving the message that they are less than, and the role that plays in almost perpetuating the challenges that they're experiencing, that lack of self advocacy and agency. And so the Building Advocates Leadership Program is working to counter those public narratives that they're used to hearing, and instead give them the tools and the support so that they can go and be their own best self advocates and join us in our advocacy work should they choose. And that program has been incredibly, the impacts that we've seen on the graduates in that program have definitely done even more than what we had thought. And so that program is one we are going to be expanding. And then I'll share one other kind of new idea that, Tim, you're actually a part of that we're pretty excited about. And this is one that we're testing to kind of see, does this make sense for us? I think one of the greatest assets the food bank has is our access to people who are experiencing poverty. We have a network of over 500 partners who are reaching, we estimate, almost as much as 180,000 people on a regular basis. So that is an incredible network of access that we have. And so we know that one major contributor to families who are kind of living kind of on the edge to then spiral into poverty is not having any savings. And so therefore it just takes one piece of bad luck to start that family spiraling into deep poverty. And so we talked about the expanded child tax credit and earned income tax that has been passed. And so many Mainers don't know that they even qualify. And because they don't need to pay taxes because of the income that they earn, many don't even apply, don't bother to file taxes. So we are partnering with New Ventures Maine, which provides free tax services, and the Maine Credit Union League to do outreach within, we're targeting I think 2 food pantries that we're starting with, to do outreach to educate people about filing taxes, providing an opportunity for folks from New Ventures Maine to then provide free tax preparation service for people to take advantage of those tax credits. Then when they get those tax credits, New Ventures Maine also has a program that if you take a portion of those tax credits and put them into a savings account, they can get a match to that savings account. And we also know that we have many people that we serve are unbanked, and meaning they spend an exorbitant amount of fees just paying their regular bills. And so educating them on how you can save money being banked, and how for many folks, a credit union is a great first financial institution to work with, because they tend to have lower barriers for that first account, and tend to have often have lower fee structures as well. So introducing them to a local credit union, the benefits of being banked, and then again getting that tax credit, starting a savings account, and getting it matched. So this is a really new space for us. We're starting small, and again, we're actually really not doing anything. It's the New Ventures Maine and it's the credit unions. We're just providing the access and the opportunity for those conversations and and connections to take place. So that's some of the root cause work that we're talking about. But again, I always like the I don't know if any of you are familiar with Jim Collins and he does the Good to Great books and all of that, but he has one theory that he calls bullets before cannonballs, which is that when you're embarking on something new and different, don't start with shooting a cannonball. You fire a lot of bullets first. You learn, you see where's the right place, and then you go in big. And that's really where we are in this root cause work, is we're firing some bullets and learning.
So Kristen, I have such a basic question. I'm almost embarrassed to ask it. You know, we got a package from you guys with a letter with an ask. Is that ask in addition to what we normally do? Is it for 1 year? Is it for 5 years? Is it for every year for 5 years? What exactly are you asking for?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to either Ethan or Aaron or Courtney, because I'm assuming the letter likely came from you, and I want to make sure I answer that question properly.
It came from Aaron.
Okay.
I'm on mute. I was on mute. And I would have to pull it up specifically, Stephen, but I do believe it was for annual. And one of the reasons I wanted to invite you here today was to just have you hear more about the campaign. And we'd love to talk to you more about, if you're interested in multi-year support, love to talk to you more about that.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Excellent. What else?
Can I just say you guys are doing great work?
Thank you.
So it's terrific what you're doing, and sort of a lot of the changes you're making, et cetera. It's just you know, and I love the sort of the goal you guys have set for yourself. It's a lofty goal, but I think it's terrific. So
Yeah.
it's great what you guys are doing for the state.
Well, thank you. And we appreciate all of your support. It's we couldn't do it without it, and appreciate again that the credit unions not only supporting the food bank, but the support you provide for our partners is so critical. I will share, just if people don't have questions, have additional questions or comments, I will just share something. We've been talking a lot lately. We're in the process of updating. We're going to be updating our strategic plan this year. So we have a strategic plan that coincides with this 2025 goal. That's obviously the plan of how we're going to get there. And even though we started the plan and made the goal in 2015, the structure of the plan is that every 3 years we go back and we look at what's changed and course correct, because obviously so many things happen that changed what strategies maybe were relevant 3 years ago, maybe aren't the right priorities now. And this was great timing, because a lot's happened just in the past 18 months, let alone the past 3 years. And it really is, I think this update to the plan is going to be the most transformational update we've had in the 10 years. And it's really has been because of COVID. COVID has, I think, has really revealed a couple things that are causing us to rethink our priorities. First and foremost, obviously, is COVID just put a magnifying glass on the unbelievable inequities that exist in how people are experiencing our economy, are experiencing our healthcare system. And while we certainly knew they were there, we will admit that we didn't realize just how profound these disparities are. We also didn't realize, even within our own work, how profound these disparities are. So a much more intentional approach to dealing with equity in our work is going to be central to updating this plan. The other thing that COVID created was opportunity that we haven't had before, in that we have more resources than we've had before in the past. We always have been very much have been really under-resourced since our existence. And we're finally in a position where we are getting resources that are allowing us to think a little bit bigger, which is good, and actually really respond to the need. And I'm saying that both in terms of funding, but also for food. We are in a place where we've never been before, where we actually have right now significant amounts of food, which is great news. But what that's been unshown, what that has revealed to us is that the food is not the biggest constraint to meeting the bold goal. The biggest constraint is access and equity, and realizing that even though we have the food, even though our partners have food, not everybody has access to get that food. And that's for a variety of, that's logistical reasons, as well as reasons related to equity, such as things like, issues of if in a community, the only food access point is in a church, no matter how open and wonderful that pantry may be, for some community members, the fact that it's in a church prevents them from being able to access that food. And so these are things we really need to take a hard look at. I think we really need to focus over the next few years and understand, who aren't we reaching? I think we've done a great job, really, and our partners, I mean, the connections out there are fabulous, but we need to recognize that there's still a segment of the population that we are not reaching for a variety of reasons. And so I think that needs to be a stronger intentional approach over these next few years, specifically looking, as we talked about, who are the populations that are the most impacted by hunger, and specifically how are we doing in reaching those populations. So that's going to be, I think, a big focus, and recognizing that in this next iteration of the plan, we need to do a much better job of including people who are experiencing hunger in this process. So it's not up to us to decide why are we not reaching. It's actually and figuring out solutions. It's asking those people and saying, what do you need in order to make sure that your family feels food secure? What do you need these food access programs to look like? How can they be more accessible? How can they be more welcoming? And I think we need to be willing and flexible to what we're going to hear in terms of what changes we need to make. So I think it's been, again, I think the intent of our network has always been in the right place, of just, really incredible people who are volunteers just trying to help their community members. But I think we've missed by not including people who are experiencing hunger and designing programs and coming up with solutions. So that's going to be an intentional part of this next strategic planning update. And I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, it looks like we are coming near the end. If there are no additional questions or comments, we are so thankful that you joined us here today. If you do need to jump off, please feel free. We will be on for a few more minutes if you have any additional questions near the end. Otherwise, we wanted to say thank you so much for joining us today and your support, and we hope to see you all again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time and for your support. We appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciated hearing everything that you said.
Great. Oh, that's wonderful to hear. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us, Elizabeth.
Well, it took me a while to get on, but I was very glad to make it and hear what you all had to say. So thank you very much for inviting me.